The story of how one woman was possessed by an unclean spirit and cursed inside with foul language. One day I had to visit a small village in the Urals and meet my grandmother there. She told me that an unclean spirit called a hiccup, or pashipka, was sitting inside her. Immediately she demonstrated, this voice in her spoke. Very similar to her grandmother's voice, but as if it were coming from inside her rib cage. She did not speak normally, but in a breath, as if she were drawing the words into herself. This made it physically difficult for her. She said she was in pain around the solar plexus. Her voice was so gruff. Well, that's what you want to know, everything. I'm not going to say anything else. And swearing. Although my grandmother herself was in her 90s, she was devout, a member of a prayer meeting, the so-called Old Believer Council. She went to pray and, in theory, could not swear. But the hiccups in her spoke swear words. It was, of course, creepy, because I had never encountered anything like that, when suddenly some incomprehensible voice speaks in a person. She told me how the hiccups came to her, and it's a very tragic story. She had been planted with this hiccup by a sorcerer when she was young. Sorcerers usually either plant it out of spite, or for some misdemeanor, or they just send out demons. A demon can enter a person when, for example, he was walking and cursed, did not cross himself in the morning, left the house without praying, then the demon can settle in you, will live, develop and torment you. She was a completely innocent girl of 17, and one day at her uncle's and aunt's house, who were receiving guests, she was serving drinks to everyone. She was delivering the brew and some man refused to drink it. The man said, "Drink it yourself. Take a sip." Apparently he was afraid that they put something in it, because he had a reputation as a sorcerer. And at such events it is usual for a sorcerer to put something in to take away his powers of witchcraft. He didn't want to drink it, so he said, "You drink it in front of me." And she refused, because she was afraid, how can I drink in front of the man? It's indecent. A girl shouldn't do that. She stood there batting her eyes, and then her uncle came up and said, "If you don't want to drink, don't drink," and she won't drink. Then the sorcerer said, "If she won't drink, she'll remember me." And this, of course, is the wizard's classic phrase, "You will remember me. You will remember me." Soon after, some strange story happened to her. She was whitewashing canvases on the pond when suddenly she heard a fly buzzing, and she had a hiccup. It is generally believed that the hiccup is believed to possess a person in the form of a fly or a mosquito, or at least he hears the buzzing before it happens to him for the first time. But the fly did not get into her. She only saw a fly and immediately had a seizure, after which she became ill. She lay there and couldn't come to her senses for a while. Then her parents took her to a doctor, and the doctor said, "I'll stifle the hiccups for 7 years. I will stifle the hiccups in her for 7 years." For 7 years she lived well, but after 7 years the hiccups in her spoke. She already had young children and was married. After a while she was treated again by a sorcerer. He said, "I'll give you some enchanted wine, you'll have to give birth to her." It is believed that the sorcerer casts out the hiccup in such a way that the woman gives birth to it like a child. After that, it must be taken, put in a little bucket, and burned in the oven with the prayer God will arise. It should burn with blue flame, shouting in different voices. Then the ashes must be put in a dry place, because if it gets into a damp place, it will come to life again and enter its mistress. My companion told me that something like that was born. She wrapped it in a cloth and put it under the bench. And in the morning she got up, and there was nothing there, just a rag rolled up, but it was as if what was in the rag had come out. She thought the hiccups had got into her again. And it has been sitting in her ever since, tormenting her and preventing her from breathing properly. People with hiccups are treated in 2 ways here. On the one hand, women, especially middle-aged women, are afraid of it. They are afraid of being infected, they are afraid that the hiccups will spread to them, because it is considered to be more of a woman's thing. It doesn't really stick to men, but it can spread to women. That is why some women in these places refuse to talk about hiccups. They asked, "Why? Why do you ask? Do any of your relatives have it? Why do you even want to know about it?" I don't even want to talk about it, so as not to attract various impure forces. And on the other hand, young people, teenagers, children try to make fun of such people by provoking their seizures, by having fun. And scary at the same time, and creepy and funny and somehow arousing. With the help of some key words, with the help of harsh sounds, they tried to cause the pious old lady to have a fit of swearing or the strange sounds that hiccups make, and in terror, laughing, they scattered. In my presence, a man, even quite elderly, a neighbor of my interlocutor, decided to show me a trick. When we talked to this grandmother on another occasion, he came out of his house and told me that the first time he heard her hiccups talking, he was very frightened. He and his friend were just helping her with something, whether it was potatoes or something he had brought, and she was treating them, and then the hiccups started talking inside her and swearing at one of them. They got very frightened. What's that? What is it? And then they were told that it wasn't the grandmother cursing, it was the hiccups in her. And this non-young neighbor said that there was something supernatural around us. And he was literally conducting an experiment. He began to say the word frog in my ear, and it is believed that hiccups, or Pachebka, do not like the words fish, frog and some others, because it is related to these animals in its origin. And when he started saying frog in his ear, Grandma suddenly started cursing at him. I think she just started cursing, because when someone whispers something in your ear in front of you, it's uncomfortable and naturally causes a harsh reaction. Especially if that neighbor is unsympathetic to her. Let's say he drinks, so she does not like him. There are different relationships between neighbors. And for him it is a confirmation that it is a hiccup to hear the words spoken mentally or very quietly.